will stand for the reading of the gospel. Someone in the crowd said to him, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the family inheritance with me." But he said to him, "Friend, who set me to be a judge or arbitrator over you?" And he said to them, "Take care. Be on your guard against all kinds of greed, for one's life does not consist in the abundance of possessions." And he told them a parable. The land of a rich man produced abundantly. And he thought to himself, "What should I do? For I have no place to store my crops." And then he said, "I will do this. I will pull down my barns and build larger ones, and there I will store all my grain and my goods. And I will say to my soul, 'Soul, you have ample goods laid up for many years. Relax, eat, drink, and be merry.' But God said to him, 'You fool, this very night your life is being demanded of you, and the things you have prepared, whose will they be?' So it is with those who store up treasures for themselves, but are not rich toward God." Gospel of the Lord. Thanks be to God. You may be seated. So many of us spend more money during the summer than we do almost any other time of year, maybe Christmas, but Julie and I do. Our flexible income, we usually spend more of that in the summer. We just got back from the beach with the kids. We're going to go see a couple of summer concerts at the end of the week that we're excited about. So a lot of people take their flexible income and they use it for rest and relaxation this time of year. You might say it's the time of year to eat, drink, and be merry for many. But right in the middle of this eat, drink, and be merry time of year, we get a gospel reading that lands like a fly in the punch bowl. I wanted to use another word, but I figured I probably shouldn't. So for those of us who are here today, we are not this morning out eating and drinking and being merry, these last days of summer, we get to read Jesus, "Let us have it," about what we do with our money. So a man comes to Jesus, and he's asking Jesus to mediate a family dispute, an argument he's having with his brother over the inheritance. And we don't know the details, but the implication is that the other brother, is holding on to the entire estate rather than sharing it with his brother, unwilling to share it. So Jesus' questioner is really asking a fair question. And clearly he sees in Jesus a wise, fair-minded man. He believes Jesus is the right guy to mediate this family dispute. You know, pastors sometimes get asked to mediate family disputes. I have been asked a few times over the years, and just like Jesus in our reading today, I have refused. I am not called, nor am I qualified to mediate a family dispute. There were no seminary classes on mediating family disputes, and that is for a good reason. But I think Jesus' questioner today would have certainly preferred the answer that I give people, "No, I can't do that," rather than the excoriating lesson he was about to get. Enter the parable of the rich fool. Now, from our American hard work, achieve success, enjoy success mentality, there is nothing foolish at all about this man. In the parable, his land produced abundantly that year. He was already wealthy, it says. He had a great year. His hard work paid off in spades. Good for him. Good for him. His land produced so much food, he didn't have a big enough place to store it all. So he built bigger barns to store all of his stuff. And then he relaxed. Eat, drink, and be merry. Who wouldn't be more relaxed if they had produced enough harvest to set them up for life? Maybe some of you have enough money you don't ever have to worry, but for most people, coming into this kind of abundance would would relieve stress. It would relieve the burden and stress of trying to make ends meet, or paying off debts, worrying about retirement. We would be able to even relax more at the beach rather than worrying whether or not we spent too much money at the beach. Maybe get a beach condo for regular trips. Eat, drink, and be merry. You are set for life. What is foolish about any of that? That sounds like the American dream to me. That's the dream I think of most people in this world. And aren't we all at least trying to save enough to not have to worry about making ends meet? Is that foolish? It doesn't seem foolish at all. But I'll tell you what does seem foolish. I used to work at a homeless shelter for youth for a year or two in Anchorage, Alaska. I was the pastoral counselor for the youth and the staff there. And in Alaska, every year, every resident of Alaska, even the babies, the newborns, get an oil dividend check at the end of the year. Everybody gets paid at the end of the year. The oil profits are shared by all the people in Alaska. One year, I remember it was $2,500 a person. So our family got $10,000 at the end of the year. Now, for a missionary family who was having to go out and raise your own salary, that was amazing. So during that time of the year at the homeless shelter, when the dividend checks were about to come out, we would have meetings with the young people there to try to encourage them to save their money, to use that money wisely, to help them to get out of the homeless shelter for their basic needs. And every year there would be some who would and some who wouldn't do the right thing with their money. One year I remember there was a young lady. She was a frequent resident at the shelter, in and out. She decided that she was going to spend her entire dividend check on limousine rides for her and her friends all over Anchorage. She spent all of that dividend money on one night of limousine rides. Now, when she told us what she did with her money, we were speechless. We were sad and a little frustrated with her. We told her to save it so she could help herself. What a foolish way to spend all that money you need to get you out of the shelter. You know, I remember back in the day, remember when Air Jordan basketball shoes came out? This was in the 80s, right? Michael Jordan was huge in the 80s, and every kid wanted a pair of Air Jordans. I wanted a pair. I might have had one. I can't remember if I did or not. Even the adults wanted. And for some, it was a status symbol, having those Air Jordan sneakers, especially if you were poor, if you were in low-income housing. Having those sneakers, that was a status symbol. And there were even crimes committed over Air Jordan sneakers. I remember one murder even over a pair of sneakers. And I remember hearing people, middle to upper class people say, good church people say, how foolish, how irresponsible it is for poor people to buy $100 tennis shoes when they have trouble putting food on the table. I remember those comments. And yeah, it seems foolish, right? But this guy in the parable, that seems foolish. But this guy in the parable seems to be doing all the right things, all the reasonable things, protecting his assets, not something foolish like limousine rides and expensive sneakers. I tell my sons, save your money, invest your money, set yourself up for the future so you don't have to worry and you can relax. No one here is going to fault me for that advice. I hope you tell your children the same thing. But the foolish one in our parable today, it isn't the limousine rider or the Air Jordan tennis shoe buyer. Maybe they too are foolish, but the foolish one in our reading who's storing all of his profit for his own security, his own future. The one who is setting himself up for the future, he's called foolish by Jesus, the one we worship. The same thing we do, Jesus says is foolish. You know, people like to say, well, you know, it's not money that's the problem. It's your attitude about money that's the problem. Well, yes and no. Because if you read the Gospel of Luke closely, you can't come to any other conclusion than this. Wealth is not a neutral thing in the Gospel of Luke. Wealth itself in the Gospel of Luke is a decidedly negative thing. That is not my interpretation. That is a fact. If you don't believe me, go read it for yourself. I am not exaggerating. Jesus talks about money and possessions more than just about anything else he talks about. And yet, when's the last time Methodists or any church has had a serious conversation about our investments? You hardly ever hear our wealth and our investments discussed as a critical issue in the modern church. Not to the level that we obsess over other issues. And I understand how that lands in a country where the dream is to store up treasures. I get it. And be assured, I do not want to preach on this passage. I am not taking joy standing here trying to defend Jesus. It convicts me too. By the world's standards, I'm a wealthy man. I may not be wealthy by American standards, but by the world's standards, I'm filthy rich. And I'm not always a good steward of the money I have. But why is it that we get so interested in certain aspects of people's lives in the church, but calling people to account for wealth and hoarding, like Jesus did, seems to be off limits? And if we're honest, we all know the answer to that. The answer is in the words of this rich fool. And if I'll turn your attention to verse 17, he says, "What should I do? For I have no place to store my crops." Then he said, "I will do this. I will pull down my barns and build larger ones. There I will store all my grain and my goods, and I will say to my soul." In 3 sentences, the protagonist of Jesus' parable used 11 first-person pronouns. 11 of them. What's mine is mine. I earned it. I deserve it. No one else better come for what's mine, not even Jesus. But what is ours, really? I mean, Job spent 40 chapters lamenting how much he had lost. And at the end, God said, "It was never yours to begin with, Job." And I think if we have our allegiance right, we will know that even though we've worked hard and even though we've earned every bit of what we have, it still does not belong to us. We're just stewards of it. So God says to the rich fool, "You fool, this very night your life is being demanded of you, and the things you have prepared, whose will they be?" Whose will they be? That is a question of ownership. Who's going to get all that stuff when you die? When you die, all that you've accumulated, all that you own ceases to be in your possession and control. And if your stuff is not yours then, is it really yours now? Jesus is calling us to spend our days getting rich towards God instead. That's the only thing you can take with you. All that you have right now, all that I have, all those guitars that I have, they will not fit with me in an 8-foot long, 2.5-foot wide, 6-foot deep box. I know I've got too many. They will not go in there. But maybe Julie can make little replicas and stick them on. Only you will go into that hole. Only you. And truth be told, if there's nothing else beyond this life, if there's nothing else, then it would be foolish not to accumulate everything you can and hoard it for yourself. But we church people, we believe that we are promised more than this life. That's why you're here. Presumably you are here trying to get rich toward God. What would have made this rich fool rich toward God is, rather than saying, "Soul, you've done well, relax, eat, drink, and be merry," instead saying, "Soul, you've done well, now share it with those who don't have enough." Because I think being rich toward God, it's not an attitude. Being rich toward God is not about how much you pray or read your Bible. Being rich toward God is trust. It's about how much you trust, real trust. And real trust is letting go of our abundance, letting go of our security, something this rich fool could not do. You know, we say the phrase in church, we say, let go, let God. You've heard it. It's on bumper stickers. It's on walls. Let go and let God. And we say that as a way to kind of relieve our anxiety. Oh, just let it go. Let God handle it. We say that to remind ourselves not to stress. But how many of us use that phrase, let go and let God, as it pertains to our money? Is your faith in God merely a means to make you feel better? Or is it helping us to give better and live better for the right things? Pastor once said to me when I was young, the surest measure of your trust in God is found in your checkbook. So when we questioned the limousine rider further about her decision, her foolish decision to spend all that money on limousine rides, this is what she said. She said, I've spent all my life poor and a good bit of it without a home. And it's not likely to get much better than this for me, because it hasn't yet. But for one night at least, I got to be a queen. I got to pretend I was something around here. And I got to treat my friends to the same feeling. And it was much more difficult to judge her after hearing that. And there is no doubt that she's the one responsible for spending her money so unwisely. That didn't change our mind about how she spent that money. So don't mistake what I'm about to say as justifying how she used the money. But I can't blame her for wanting to feel like royalty for a moment when all her life she hadn't. I can't blame the young kid who lives in the housing projects for wanting at least one status symbol in their life, even if it is an overpriced pair of basketball shoes or a nice smartphone. The foolishness of what we do with our money is not measured or determined by whether we have enough money to spend luxuriously or not. The foolishness of what we do with our money is about misplaced trust. And I kind of think that that limousine rider may have had a little more ability to trust than I do. Foolish or not, the one thing she had over me was her ability to let go of everything she had and give her friends a feel-good moment, whereas I want to hold on to my extra income so I can be more secure. Who, according to Jesus, is the bigger fool? Let us take a moment of silence.